Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Stephen King podcast. This is episode number 45, so we're closing in on the big 50. Yeah, and today we are going to talk about the movie Stand By Me, going to review it and talk about it. And there will be spoilers, but I think that most of you have seen it anyway, so don't have to worry much about that.
And if you haven't, shame on you.
Yeah, exactly. You have a lot of years. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Salem Slot, and I would suspect that most of you have read that one as well.
Yep.
So it should be pretty straightforward with the spoilers today. Nothing much to be afraid of.
Yep.
But let's start with the news.
Welcome, welcome. Do not fear the door that lies before you. We will protect you. We are your guides, Hans and Lou, and we will give you the latest in Stephen King news. But before we do so, you must prove yourself worthy. You must open the door and join us in the death room.
Alrighty, and we start the news with a downer. It's a big downer. After we had just gotten the interesting news about who had been cast as Pennywise, William Poulter. The whole thing was looking really promising, but it's all come crashing to the ground as the director of the picture, Cary Fukunaga, most recently known for his True Detective series, has backed out of the picture because it sounds like there's various reasons, but it sounds mostly that when the picture transferred from Warner Brothers over to New Line wanted to stand firm on a certain budget. We're being quoted $30 million, and Fukunaga said that he couldn't deliver the picture he wanted to make with that budget. And I think there was also some discussion from him about he wanted to shoot in New York, and they never really say if it's New York State or New York City, but with that budget, it wouldn't have been possible as well. So the whole two-picture project has stopped dead in its track. Pretty sad news, Hans. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a shame.
Mm-hmm.
It looked really good with the two movies and the director and everything. And it's been speculations widely on the net since this news broke that if it really is the money that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that maybe there's been difference in opinions in how they're going to do it and what's going to be in it and stuff like that. So we don't really know what the problem was.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we will never know because stuff like this usually doesn't reveals itself that often.
No.
It's almost always the same reason when stuff like this happen, money or difference in opinions. But it's hard to know the details and exactly what's happening.
Yeah,
but it's a shame.
It is, because I was really excited to see this two-movie structure with one movie, the first movie dealing with the kids and the second one with the adults.
Yeah.
I thought that would have been a really interesting, different approach to this kind of a story, which not just in a King book, but if it's any kind of story where he deals with a character that's gone through something in his childhood and then later on as adult tries to resolve it, the movie has to cram both of those stories into one movie, and usually the flashback stuff gets the shorter end of the stick, and the way it was structured, the stuff that the kids go through is just as important, if not more important, than what their adult versions go through. So I thought it would have been really cool to see this first movie as a standalone, and a horror movie with kids that could be really scary. I mean, it's a dicey proposition because you got to have good kid actors, but I think there's more and more good kid actors out there nowadays. And then to be able to watch that and live with it for a year or whatever, and then to get the second half of the story and see them as adults and then experience that level later on when both movies are out on DVD or Blu-ray or streaming, then to put the whole thing together, would be an interesting journey for a viewer to be able to go through that process over 3 or 4 years. But now it's dead. And I have to think that this approach is going to die too. That the splitting of the two movies.
Yeah.
We'll have to see.
I'm thinking that maybe for those viewers that aren't Stephen King fans, that it might be somewhat hard to follow the two movies, one with the adult and one with the children, if you don't have the backstory, if you haven't read the book and you don't really know what to expect. And I think maybe that scared the filmmakers or the studio.
I don't know. I mean, if they're worried about that, they could close the first movie with linking the adults to the kid actors, so that kind of sets like the bookmark. So when the fans come back to the movie a year later, they know what they're in for. And I have to think with all these other franchises that are doing multiple movies, really 2 movies is not a big deal.
No.
But we'll have to see what happens. Maybe this will be resurrected and might even come back as a trilogy.
Yeah. One thing that was mentioned as well was that the studio was a little bit nervous about clowns now that the new Poltergeist movie had quite a lot of clowns in it.
That's so
but
silly.
I don't know. That's
like saying you're nervous about another cop movie coming out. I mean, how many cop movies do we get in a year? That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't buy that. That's just the internet talking, I think. But like King said, we'll always have Tim Curry as Pennywise, so we'll have to console ourselves with that. This may be get resurrected, but even if it does, we're probably looking at 4 or 5 years before we see anything. I doubt if this will be kept in the same state that it is now and turned around quickly. I just can't see another director jumping into something like this. He would want to have input into how it's handled, and he probably might have a different vision and all that, which is really too bad.
Yeah, because and I think that is actually kind of good, because if they were to get another director just like that in a few days or maybe a couple of weeks, that will probably be someone that isn't that invested in this particular movie, that just want to do something.
Yeah.
Because as you say, a good director would like to have his or her input. Yep. And I don't think the one that they will hire, if they hire someone quick, that will be someone that will do exactly as they say. So I don't think that's a good solution even. I hope they wait a while and get someone that's really dedicated.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I wouldn't want to hear an announcement that they found a director and they're going to continue with the project. I just don't think that person would be more like a gun for hire than having a vision. So I'm not saying it couldn't turn out to be good, but it would be much tougher. Maybe Josh Boone, if you're not too busy. I mean, you're only doing The Stand and Mutant X-Men and whatnot. Maybe you can step in and do this too. Why not?
Let's do The Stand first.
Yeah. Anyhow, so that's a bummer. I was looking forward to seeing his take on it, but that's why you never count your movies until you buy your ticket and sit in the theater and see the film start.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So, up next.
Moving on to the next bummer. Sorry, I meant next movie.
Not a movie. No,
not a movie. A TV series, Under the Dome, which most of you who have followed this podcast know what Lou and I think about. Anyhow, the 3rd season is on its way. The first episode will be a 2-hour premiere for June 25th. So when you listen to this, it will be maybe a couple of weeks away. And there's been some interesting information sent out about this. Neil Baer talked about it at CBS Summer Press event, which I understand is where the networks talk about their upcoming TV shows. And he said this: "We will tell you why the dome came down and what it's all about. You will know exactly why this happened, the way it happened." So by those sentence, I take it that they are maybe trying or thinking about ending it after this season, because it doesn't make much sense to reveal everything and then keep it going. The only way I think they could do that is if they reveal that it's, for example, aliens who's put the dome over them, and the 4th season would be about beating the aliens and escaping the dome. But I don't think. I think that once you know why the dome is there, I think a lot of the powers that the show has on a lot of people, even though we don't like it. But I think once they know why the dome is there, it's not going to work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a very big part of the story, that they don't know why. But it will be interesting to see where they're going with this one. As most of you listeners know, I'm forcing Lou to watch this so we can talk about it. I know you would rather skip it if you could, but
Yeah.
no way.
No, no.
No.
But like you, I'm hoping, based on what they're saying, that this is going to be the last season. And I
Yeah.
agree with you. If they show what's behind the curtain, like in the first 2 episodes of the season, it better be something really that it's going to knock people's socks off, or I think the show will just fall through the floor.
Yeah.
If it's a government-controlled experiment, Barbie's dad is behind it with his company. I don't know. It's the journey that is more important than the actual destination, especially with King stories. That's why you get divided opinions about the endings of a lot of his books, or the ending of the Dark Tower series. So if you're going to tell us really soon into this third season what it's all about, man, I don't know how they're going to keep the momentum going and keep the viewers interested if they answer that question.
No, and even if they tell it in the last episodes, I mean, next season, I don't think that will work in next season either. So.
Yeah, I tend to agree with your theory that this might be the last season, because I think it was structured for 3-season financing. So,
yeah,
obviously, if the ratings were really good, they would have kept going. But where the show is at now, I think that they're definitely leaving themselves maneuvering room to close things out this season if it need be. So, we'll have to see.
Yeah, and I must say that even though I'm disappointed with most things in this show, I would be terribly disappointed if it was either Barbie's dad or the military or something like that who had done this dome, because I wouldn't believe such a ending. I mean,
so it's aliens or nothing for you?
Yeah, I think so, or some kind of aliens, or I don't know, but I mean,
or from the future. Maybe it's time travel.
Yeah, something like that. But for it to be mankind, man-made from this time, that wouldn't be possible. So I mean, I don't think that would be an ending that would fly for me, at least.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we'll see by the end of the summer.
Yep, it'll be interesting to see where everybody went at the end of last season when they stepped through the underground portal.
Yep.
But I wonder if it's going to become like a cross, because they got Mark Helgenberger from CSI is going to be on the show. So. Maybe it's going to become a crime show. I don't know.
Yeah, it would be fun if she played the same characters as in CSI.
That would actually be kind of awesome. All right, yeah. That's turning hopefully to another TV show that will turn out to be much more interesting, and I think it's a better book than Under the Dome as well. Is 11/22/63, which has begun filming, and that took place on May 25th, 2015. And I believe they're filming in Toronto, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
So we've got that going, and we were also told that there was an additional cast member, T.R. Knight, and he will play Johnny Clayton, a salesman in the 1960s who can't quite break up with his estranged wife. And that is, of course, the driving character behind the relationship that Jake has with Sarah, or Sadie, I should say. So it seems like they filled out their cast now with most of the major roles, and we've really got our fingers crossed that this is going to turn out to be great. It's probably one of King's strongest books in the last couple of years. I think you could put it up there against anything after that's been released, and I think a lot of people would still come back to this one. And I think it's because it's got that bittersweet ending to it that really makes it work for me. I mean, the Lee Harvey Oswald stuff is cool, but the fact that this guy has to basically give up the love of his life in order to set things right is a powerful ending to the story, which I happen to like quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree. It would be very interesting to see this TV show. I'm a bit nervous though, because a lot of stuff have had good potential and failed. So I'm a bit afraid, but I hope it would be so great if this one could work out.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy that they have said that it will be 9 episodes.
Yeah.
And hopefully they will stick with that. And since the story is ending, it has an ending. So if they follow that, they won't be able to continue in another episode just because the ratings are good. So
right. And hopefully there's no crossover with Under the Dome.
No.
Maybe it goes through the diner.
Maybe the people from, the people from Under the Dome is showing
into
up.
the diner.
Yeah. No, that would be terrible. Yep. And the last news for today is that the final cover for the US edition of The Bazaar of Bad Dreams has been revealed. It was revealed in, I don't know if it was 5 or 6 parts over at stephenking.com, but now it's finished, and it's a very interesting cover, I think. It shows a head with no face, but with images in that face. The Reaper, a boat. I think it's images from some of the stories that will be in the book.
Yeah.
And I must say, I like everything about this cover except for the font that the title is written in. I think I mentioned that in the last podcast as well.
Yeah.
I think it looks a little bit sloppy, I think.
Well, I think it's
but otherwise, yeah, I think I think so as well. But I'm not a fan of it.
Oh, okay.
So, but besides that, and I can live with that. It's not a big problem, but I wouldn't have done that myself if I've done the cover. But I love the head with the missing face and all the images, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I like everything except the one butterfly just under his name. I think it's too big.
Yeah, the big one.
Yeah, I wish it was a bit smaller. But other than that, I mean, that's a minor quibble. But other than that, it's a really inventive cover, which is great.
Yeah.
And the Grim Reaper was the last piece that was added, so that was pretty cool. Yeah.
So it will be interesting then, as we review this book or the stories in the book, we'll have to go back to the cover and see if we can link all the stuff that's on this cover to the stories.
Yeah.
I have some ideas, but I'm not going to say anything about them yet. But
sure,
I have some ideas that where those images can be from.
Yeah, and as we're recording this is Sunday, May 31st, which is like 2 days before Finders Keepers comes out. So after that, this will be the second book of the year again. I don't know if he's going to keep that streak going. That's how many years in a row now? We'll have to. I think it's 2. At least.
Yeah, 2 or 3.
So we'll have to see what happens next year, but I'm not expecting. Well, I would imagine he would release the 3rd Finders Keepers book.
Yeah,
or Mr. Mercedes book, I guess. And
yeah, I think that one would be out next year, but I don't know.
Yeah.
We haven't heard of anything else yet,
Yeah.
so.
No, and I know I forgot to talk to you about this before we went on the air, Hans, but I think it was Cemetery Dance was King that was tweeting about what characters would people like to see a follow-up to, and I put down Charlie from Firestarter, but I'm not, or no, I'm sorry, somebody put that down. I put down Mark Petrie from Salem's Lot, because I know when we did our discussion about that, I really like that ending sequence with them on the road. And even though we know what happened to Ben Mears in the Dark Tower series, it'd still be cool to see what happened to Mark Petrie. And to me, that could be turned into a TV series. So we'll have to see. But I don't know. Will he keep the streak alive next year? We'll keep our fingers crossed. But might not happen.
He has a pretty good record. I'm just looking it up, and this year we're getting 2 books. Last year we got 2 books. 2013 we got 2 books if you count Ghost Brothers and Joyland. Then in 2012 we got 1 book. 2011 we got 1 book. 2010 we got 2 books. 9 1 book. 8 2 books. 7 1 books. 6 2 books. So he's been doing 2 books almost every year in this since 2000. It's a couple of years that just have 1 book. So,
really? Wow.
Yeah.
That kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, if we look from 2000, there were 2 books. 2001, 2 books. 2002, 2 books. 2003, 2 books if you count the revisited Gunslinger. 2004, there were actually 3 books. Dark Tower 6 and 7 and Fateful. Then 2005, there were only 1. 6, there were 2. 7, there were 1. 8, there were 2. 9, there were 1. 10, 2. 11 and 12, there were 1. So that it's 5 years in the last 15 that's only had 1 book, and the other has had 2 or even 3.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
So so I would say that pretty good chance that I will have 2 books next year as well.
But you'd almost have to say in hindsight that when King had that accident, I think he really had a wake-up call. I mean, he was prolific before that, but he's been relentless ever since he had that accident in 1999. So.
And that is so strange, because when he talked about quitting all along, I actually believed him then.
Well, you're not feeling good, right? Then you say stuff like that. So.
No, but I mean, and then he turned around and started writing. So, well, I'm happy because we've
Absolutely.
got a lot of books.
It's almost like he made a deal with the devil. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, as long as I keep writing, you keep me alive.
Yeah, like Dorian Gray or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and that is the news for this segment.
This is great. What's our job? We'd like drive around, pick up stiffs or what?
It's time for reviews from the night shift.
Now, in our first section of the night shift reviews, we're going to take a look back at one of the movies that makes has become our outro song for the podcast, and of course that is Stand By Me. And it was prompted by the news of the recent passing of Benny King, and of course who wrote and performs the song. And this is a movie like that. When people always ask what's your favorite Stephen King movie, you'll get The Shining or Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, Misery. But this is almost kind of like become a forgotten movie for a lot of people. And I just recently rewatched it because of the passing of Benny King with our family. And this is a movie that it's a boys club kind of movie, but my wife likes it quite a bit. And my son, who's 15 now, he enjoyed it quite a bit as well. And I think it's because it's about friendships that even though it's mostly about these boys, it cuts across lines. And I think it's a movie that everybody can enjoy. I don't know have you watched it recently, Hans?
Yeah, I actually watched it just a couple of days ago for this podcast.
Oh, cool. And what'd you think?
Yeah, I'm still loving it.
Yeah.
It's been quite a while since I watched it. And because of that, I posted on Facebook because a lot of times you see a movie and you think it's great. And then a lot of years pass and you keep remember this movie as great and people are talking about it and everybody says, oh, it's great, it's great, it's great. And eventually that almost becomes the truth because people are saying it.
Yeah.
And then many years later you watch that movie again and you can't for the life of you remember why in hell you thought it was a good movie. It's happened to me quite a lot. So I wanted to ask people, I asked people to comment if this movie really is as good as everybody says it is. Or if it is one of those movies that you saw many years ago and loved, but if you would see it again, it wouldn't be quite so good. And I got 109 answers.
Wow, very good.
And all but one thought it was a great movie still.
Cool.
Yeah, so apparently people are still loving it because it's how many years is it? Is it 30 years next year?
Yep, 1986.
86, yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's so
yeah, and I watched it a couple of days ago, and I also think it's still as good as it was when I first saw it.
Yeah, it's timeless, like Shawshank,
Yeah, and I think one thing that makes it so good, besides the story itself, is that it takes place in the past. No matter when you see it, it takes place in the past. So it by that it can't be outdated because it's outdated from the start. If you understand what I mean.
The only thing
everybody looks.
Yeah, the only thing that's outdated a little bit is the bookends, like the closing bookend with Richard Dreyfuss when he's writing the story on his word processor.
Yeah.
Other than that, than that, you can, like you said, it's a memory story. So everything else is fine to look old, but just to see that Wang processor, which I believe King used at one time in his career too, that's the only thing that kind of takes me out of it. But I do like how the movie closes with him typing those last couple of lines. I think that's really well done. Yeah,
I agree, and I think that more gives you the feeling of nostalgia and you remember how it was than you think it's, oh my god, this movie is so old. Like when it's a movie that's supposed to take place in present time or even the future. If you see that a couple of years later, it feels very old but this is supposed to feel old because it takes place in the 50s. So I think that has saved the movie, or maybe not save it because it's the story that carries it. But I think that a lot of people would dismiss it, even though the story is great, because it would look outdated.
Yes.
And
yes.
you don't have that here. So I think that has helped the movie to stay on top.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the story, like you said, is timeless because it's a coming of age story. And it really works well because this story gives you 4 distinct characters that at the core of it. 2 of them are more better developed. The character that Will Wheaton plays and River Phoenix plays. Those 2 characters are more developed than the ones that Corey Feldman and Jerry O'Connell play. But it's an interesting time capsule for us too because we've seen what these actors have become later on in life. Will Wheaton, went on to Star Trek Next Generation, and now he's more of an internet personality, and you see him occasionally on The Big Bang Theory. Corey Feldman went through a period of infamy. He was fairly popular for a while there, did a couple of movies and that. And Jerry O'Connell, who played Vern, he's a chubby kid, but he went on to play, he really changed in appearance, slimmed out quite a bit, and he was on a couple of TV shows and that, and he did the Sliders TV series, which I always quite enjoyed. I don't know if you remember that, Hans.
No, I didn't.
They jump from parallel Earths, so...
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw him as a grown-up, and I couldn't see that it was him. I had to be told that was the kid from Stand By Me, and now that you know it, you recognize him.
Yeah.
But he's made a total change.
Yeah, and
definitely.
Yeah, and one of the more moments in the film that has become more poignant of because what happened in real life is the character that River Phoenix played, Chris Chambers, who is where the story kicks off is with Richard Dreyfuss's character, Gordy, and Richard Dreyfuss and Will Wheaton don't look anything alike. So that casting kind of like, you had Will Wheaton grew up to look like Richard Dreyfuss. No, not even close. But, the Chris Chambers character is killed in a restaurant trying to break up a fight. And unfortunately, in real life, River Phoenix died of an overdose. So that moment in the film when his character sort of fades away like a ghost, that always gets to me because I always think about what happens to River Phoenix in real life. So, and then there's the supporting cast is really good. Obviously, the one that stands out the most is Kiefer Sutherland, who went on to become more famous than just being the son of Donald Sutherland, but he had a lot of success with 24, and they just sort of like did a rebooted miniseries last year. And he brings fairly good depth to the Ace Merrill character, the big thug character. So there's just this is a coming of age story about these 4 boys who were on the cusp of becoming adults, and it just touches on a lot of great experiences that I think that are not just restricted to America. Hans, I'm interested from your perspective. Could you relate to some of the things that they were talking about, like the comics and the cartoon characters and having a cigarette after a meal is always the best time for a cigarette and stuff like that? Did that all kind of, could you relate to all that stuff?
Well, not the smoking part.
Right.
Because I did smoke when I was younger, but not that young. And that wasn't such a big thing. And also I grew up in the cities, so we didn't have any railroad tracks or forest or stuff like that. So I grew up in a totally different environment, but I can still relate to the friendship and the stuff they talked about. So I can relate, but I think it's on a different level because it didn't take place like it does in the movie.
Interesting. Because like
how about you?
For myself, like I grew up in a small town, and there was railroad tracks, and we were on them and stuff like that, and we didn't have the mountains or anything like that. The area I lived in was pretty flat, but a lot of the relationships and that, and the whole friendship thing. When you're 12 years old, your friends are really like that. Those relationships are so pure. Because you're not complicated yourself, and you're not like kids are not complicated like adults. So those friendships are really pure, and I think that's where the power of the story comes through. That even though these kids, because their differences of as you grow older, eventually they cause rifts between them all. But even though they were really different characters, at that time in their life, where they were, what they were, really brought. They were really close, and the character that Corey Feldman played, Teddy Duchamp, his character is kind of deranged, because he's been abused by his dad, and it's funny. They're all the characters, I think, except Vern, who's probably easily the most naive out of the four. There's some sort of family problems going on that impacting how they're going forward in their life. Vern is, he's just a happy-lucky-go guy, and he just doesn't have the smarts to see beyond the horizon of of the moment. I always find it funny that when Gordy tells the lard-ass Hogan story, that Vern wants to know if he had to pay to enter the contest. Like that was his big question here.
Yep.
And Teddy Duchamp wanted to know if that was the ending.
Yep.
He said your endings suck.
Yeah, I wanted him to go home and shoot his dad or something like that. Yeah.
And the only one that really got the story was Chris Chambers. And Chris is, like his family's like the black sheep family. So even when he does something wrong and tries to right it, it's a harsh lesson for him to learn that there's people out there that will take advantage of him. The fact that he returned the money and then the teacher ended up buying a dress with it was, so I just thought it was all really well done. And, there's a lot of that folklore stuff that you hear all these stories about. There's this haunted house or this person's got a real mean dog and stuff like that. And that's all in here. And it's kind of it's really autobiographical in a way, because Will Wheaton's character, Gordy LaChance, is estranged from his parents because he lost his older brother, played by an actor who's no stranger to us. No. And he's going to be John Cusack is going to be in the upcoming Cell movie, and he's done Room 1408 as well. So he's, there's another link to Stephen King there as well through other projects. And another great thing about this movie is it's got one of those neat things that King does is a story within a story, because you have this whole story about these four boys together, but then you have this lard-ass Hogan story in the middle, which is just an awesome story. I mean, the puking looks a little fake now because you can obviously tell that the hose is behind their mouths and stuff like that. But still,
sometimes they're not even behind their mouth; they're behind their cheeks and look like they're vomiting from there.
Yeah, so this is all it was all done practically, right? So it's pre-CGI, so they couldn't cover it up too much, but. Yeah, and then
I don't think that matters really, because it's a story that Gordy tells them. So
exactly,
it doesn't have to be perfect.
No, it doesn't, because the story is so good. You don't need the greatest special effects and whatnot. I mean, the best shot in the movie is probably when Gordy and Vern are trying to run across the bridge, and the train looks so close, and that's a great moment as well. And I also love the bookend, the closing bookend with Richard Dreyfuss's character, lost and telling this story, and his son and his friend are like, wow, what a weird adult. He said that hours ago that we was going to leave in 5 minutes, and then just the last couple of words that he types on the screen, I never saw these guys again, and but I've never had friends like that, it's just really. It's a real nice summary of what the movie's all about.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yes.
When you were young, you had a lot of good friends.
Yeah.
That you hang out with every second you could.
Yep.
But then you drifted apart, and now you don't even know if they are alive or dead.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Very
that's
true.
that's pretty sad, really,
Yeah.
when you think about it.
Yeah, it is. It makes you reflect back on your own childhood and your relationships and friends that you thought you were going to live and die with, and they just kind of drift out of your lives. And I guess it's part of growing up, but it's kind of a bittersweet thing. And then the movie captures that perfectly. And King was blown away by the movie when he saw it. So.
Yeah, and I must say that I really like the performance of the 4 kids.
Yep.
Because it's quite rare that you get a child actor to be as good as they are.
Yeah.
And here we have 5 kid actors that are all very good, I think.
Yes.
So that is, I mean, a lot of directors say that the worst thing to work with are kids and animals. So.
Yeah.
And I think they did a great job in this movie. All 4 of them. You believe in them.
Absolutely. And tip of the hat to Rob Reiner, who was on a bit of a King streak. Like he did this and Misery, and unfortunately he never did anything after that. I don't even know if he wanted to do another King movie after this one or after Misery, but it would have been nice to see him because he was like the Frank Darabont of the 80s. He maybe got these stories. I don't know how, but he understood them and he captured them really well.
Yeah, maybe he wanted to stop before he got a bad one.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So my hat's off to Rob Reiner. Who would have thought that the meathead from All in the Family would end up turning out 2 of the better King movies that collectively and separately I don't think get enough recognition against the other ones that get more mention. So it took Benny King to say to prompt me to watch this again. I have watched it within the last couple of years, but I watched it again with my family, and we had a great time. And it's just and it works at all ages. That's the cool thing about it. When you're a kid, you look at it one way; it's an adventure story, and as you're older, you kind of look back on your life and say, "Yep, I can relate to that stuff." So.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people miss that this is actually a Stephen King movie because it's not the first thing you think about if you don't know King.
No.
Think it's mostly about horror.
Yeah.
This will not be the first movie you think about when you think about King. So, but I must say that it follows the story very well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is it is really King's story that they are telling in the movie.
Yeah.
Which is not always the case, but here it is, and they are doing a great job, Rob Reiner, and I'm not sure who wrote the script, if Rob Reiner did that as well, but
I'm looking here, it says Reynold Gideon.
Where is he hiding out? He should do more.
Yeah,
scripts.
Let me see what else he's done. He's also acted. What did he? He wrote Mr. Brooks, Jungle to Jungle, Cutthroat Island, Cuffs, Made in Heaven, which I believe was a Warren Beatty movie. It was a remake of Mr. Jordan. Starman. Wow, he wrote Starman. Okay. And another one, a man, a woman, and a bank, which I'm not familiar with. But so he's done a bit of everything. He's acted. He's produced. He did.
Sure did a good.
Yeah, did a great job here. I mean, it's interesting that the better King movies are the ones that are very small stories, confined space sort of, or place stories like this one and Misery, Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile. They're all kind of contained within a small area with a small group of people. Whereas with the ones that are more expansive don't tend to do as well. So. I really was glad to watch this again. It's not.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the simpler stories as well. So even though it's many of King's books are very complex, and I think that makes them hard to turn into movies.
Yeah.
But this story is pretty much straightforward, so that helps as well.
Yeah, and it's a grounded story. Like you said, this is not. If this people wouldn't know that King had wrote this, they probably wouldn't even realize that it was something that he had done. But it's a very grounded. The supernatural. There's no supernatural in here. I mean, there's the dead body, and it's an interesting that they've changed the name of the movie to Stand By Me from The Body. And
Yeah.
I wondered if it was the right choice, and I think it is. I think it's the right choice because it's a much more relatable title for the average moviegoer. I think The Body would work just as fine for me, but I think Stand By Me also captures what the story's all about as well. So
Yeah, and I think The Body is more. If you only hear the name, sounds more like a horror movie
yeah, yeah,
than Stand By Me. So I think that might have been one of the reasons they wanted to change the title.
yeah, yeah. So that's another successful adaptation from a novella from the Different Seasons collection. So
Yeah.
they've all been done with varying degrees of success. The Body, Apt Pupil, and what else do we have in here?
Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, and there's one more.
And the fourth hasn't been done. The Breathing Method.
Breathing Method, yes, and that one's been rumored off and on as well. And it's, Stand By Me, or The Body, represents the season of fall from innocence. So, very well done movie, and hats off to everybody involved, and Mr. Rob Reiner, who did a great job with this. And if you haven't watched it recently, hopefully our conversation will tickle you enough to prompt you to rewatch it, because it's well worth rewatching.
Yeah, and if you are like me, a bit afraid that this is something you liked in the past but won't like again, it's not the case. So you should definitely check it out, and you can do it without being nervous about spoiling one of your favorite movies.
And maybe you'll find out who's stronger, or who would win in a fight, Mighty Mouse or Superman.
Yeah. Is Mighty Mouse still around even?
No. He hasn't been in a cartoon for a long time, so.
He's been replaced by Batman.
I guess, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so folks, if you've watched this movie, or if you're going to watch it, it was great that you got all those Facebook responses, Hans. Maybe we'll get some more from our podcast listeners as well. Let us know what you thought of the movie, if you can relate to it, and if there's any particular moments in that really ring true for you.
Yeah, and I must say also that a lot of people commented in the Facebook question that they had grown up in a very similar way, as you mentioned, small town, and they can relate to this story very well. Okay, moving on to Salem Slot, and I think this one is probably harder to relate to if you haven't run into a couple of vampires recently.
That's right, and we should set this up a bit, that this is part of the ongoing Stephen King Revisited feature that we'll be doing, and following the path of what Richard Chizmar and I'm drawing a blank on his name. Brian Freeman, along with Bev Vincent, are doing, going through a read of all the Stephen King books. We covered off Carrie a couple of podcasts ago. We went so long with our last podcast that we didn't do the next one, but we are continuing. And so we're setting up the second book right now, Salem's Lot, which we have covered a couple of times in several other podcasts as well. So. But still, there's some interesting reads here. If you follow that site, you'll get some perspectives from other people. And we had some from three people this time, right, Hans?
Yes. We have from Bev Vincent, as you mentioned. Richard, of course, since he is the one reading.
Yep.
And Christopher Golden, who has written... is it the Stephen King universe, I think?
I'm not sure about that, but he is a writer. I know that.
Yeah, I think he's been involved with a couple of books about King as well.
Yeah.
All of these three have written about Salem Slot. And we have talked about it in movie forms a couple of podcasts ago, in all its forms as a movie, both TV series and follow-up movie and everything. But they are mainly focusing on the books, or I don't know, maybe they are entirely focusing on the books. Yeah, I think they are.
Yes, they are. Yeah. Strictly the books. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. It was quite some time since I actually read this book myself, but I'm getting eager to read it.
The one with the extra scenes, or just the original?
Well, I think the additional scenes would be interesting to read as well.
Yeah.
So I think that one would probably be the one I prefer to read. How about you? Was it long time since you read this one?
Yes, it's been a while. I can't honestly recall when it's the last time I've read. I haven't even finished I have never finished reading the new version, the later version that came out with the extra scenes added into the back of the book. I read through those, but I didn't reread the whole book.
No.
So, but this is the book that a lot of people quote. I think is their first memory of Stephen King. I'm still thinking The Shining is the first book that I read by him, and I came to these other two afterwards. It's interesting that especially if you read Bev Vincent's Second Coming column about what Bev does with each book is he sets up a historical perspective for context of when the book was written and where King's head was at. Yeah, where King's head was at, and while he was writing it, and this is the book that actually he had two books in mind, according to Bev, and one was Road Work, and the other one was this. And his agent warned him that, if he goes with this Salem's Lot, then people were going to brand him a horror writer. And of course, we know what history is wrought after that. And King at the time says as long as he's getting paid and the checks don't bounce, he didn't care what people called him. So there's a lot of influences that came about with the creation of Salem's Lot, a discussion over dinner with some friends about what Dracula would be like, and how he would make out in the modern world, because King was teaching Dracula at his high school class, and they joked around with it. And he also was, familiar with Our Town, Thornton Wilder's Our Town, as well as Peyton Place, because this book does sort of have a soap opera feel to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm always surprised when this come up that King is a horror writer, and his agent warned him that if you publish this, people are going to look to you as a horror writer.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe this is we're talking about early 70s now, but I don't think it's a bad thing to be seen as a horror writer. I mean, of course, you're never going to get a Pulitzer Prize or something like that, but I don't think that King actually needs that, or maybe wants it even. So I'm a bit surprised that people think that a horror writer is something bad.
Well,
and it's used in as a warning almost.
Yeah, well, I think you had your finger right on it in your first sentence, where back in the day, horror writers, along with a lot of the stuff that's big now, science fiction, fantasy, that kind of stuff was looked down upon back in those days. I remember it it's like kind of around the time when Star Trek was on the air, original Star Trek, and people say, "Oh, life on other planets, that's all baloney," and that, and then the show went off the air, and then Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon, and ever since then, people have kind of opened up to the possibility, and horror has become more of an accepted thing, and nowadays it's a big driver. I think you've just seen the acceptance of genre fiction, and King was probably among the other things that he's done, because he's had so many influences over so many people. He's made genre fiction an acceptable thing that people don't have to be ashamed about admitting that they like to read. And it's big business nowadays. Between him and maybe George Lucas with the Star Wars movies, I think that those two people had the biggest influence on pop culture. And Salem's Lot, again, tied, the idea of vampires with a small town vibe that, again, it's kind of it's a look back at an era in America that's changed, where this is kind of like Andy Mayberry or Andy Griffith of Mayberry days, where everybody knew their neighbors and everybody was friends and that, but behind closed doors at night they all had their secrets. Whereas nowadays people don't even know who their neighbors are anymore. So it's just a different times. So
I actually remember. I don't think I read Salem Slot, but I remember reading one of King's book in, I think it was 7th or 8th grade, as a book review in my Swedish class.
Oh yeah.
And I remember my teacher saying that she didn't approve of the book, but she was going to let me read it anyway. But she actually came back to me by the end of that semester and confessed that she was wrong, and that Stephen King actually was very, very talented and had a very good way with words.
Cool.
Yeah, so she actually fessed up to that he was a good writer. So that was fun.
Yeah, and I know that you're big into book covers. I'm wondering, what was the first version of this Salem's Lot cover that you saw? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think as always back in those days, and now we're talking maybe first half of the 80s or mid 80s, when I discovered Stephen King here in Swedish. It was the Swedish cover, and it looked like you see a silhouette of a town.
Yep.
And I think you see the Marston house. And it's in the sunset, I think. Okay. But it wasn't really a scary cover, actually.
Right. Yeah. I'm looking at the I think that's the Doubleday cover. I'm looking over at the revisited site, and they're showing that picture of the Marston house, and the town is in the O of Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
So
and that's not a scary cover either.
No.
It's actually, it looked like a very nice little town. So
yeah. I'm pretty sure for me, this one is the cover that stands out next to The Shining, which the version I always saw was like with the silver cover with the silhouette of the boy. I think the first Salem's Lot edition that I remember is the totally black one with the drop of blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the Salem's Lot cover I remember, and that was a cool cover too.
Yeah. Speaking about covers, I want to mention as well that in those days the Swedish covers were always done for the Swedish market.
Okay.
So it was always a different cover than the US or UK cover.
Right.
And I'm a bit sad about that in today, because a lot of countries use the same covers as either the US or the UK, and they only change the title to their language. So I think, even though I like many of the new covers, I like when a publisher do his own cover.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that it's an easy way to just use the existing cover. I think they should draw a different cover.
Cool.
But that really doesn't have anything to do with Salem Slot, but I just wanted to mention it.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's good. I just throwing out some random facts here. I'm plucking them out of Bev's article. There's some great stuff in here. Kurt Barlow is in the first draft was called Count Sarlanoff, which is kind of cool. The original title for the book was Second Coming, but King's wife didn't like it. She thought it sounded like a sex manual title. And apparently King finished the first draft of this the day before he got the call from Bill Thompson about the paperback sale of Carrie. So that's kind of cool. And this is the one where we got when we got the reissued edition. That, of course, there's all the sections that have been cut out about the knives and the rats and that. So, and this is something that I think his agent just didn't like rats or something, because I think he had him cut similar scenes out of another book as well, but I can't remember which book it is off the top of my head. So
this gets me thinking. I wonder how many of King's books have stuff cut out of them. I mean, I guess almost everyone has, because when he writes the first draft and editor checks it over, they change stuff, and so a lot of stuff has been moved out. But it would be interesting to know which books have whole chunks moved out, and not just if they might have the same scene, but it's rewritten and different in that way. But like when you pull out chunks from the books and remove entire scenes, it would be interesting to see how many of those who has it.
Yeah.
I have some. I got to read a galley from, I think it was Dreamcatcher, and in that the book was released around the time that it was the election in the U.S. between Al Gore and, was it Bush?
I think so.
I think so, yeah. Doesn't matter really, but
no.
In the galley it was Gore who was president, and of course then he didn't win the election, and if it now was Bush, I think it was Bush, became the president, and in the Finnish book it was changed to Bush being president. So that was quite interesting to see, and I guess that says who King wanted for president. But it's an interesting fact, because that book was written before the election, but so close to the election that they could change the galley to the Finnish books based on what the election had become. So
well, he could have always just if it had happened, if the book was too far along, he always could have incorporated it into Dark Tower and said it was an alternate world or something. Like that.
Exactly.
It's interesting reading Christopher Golden's column, and I don't see any list of him having written any Stephen King related books, but I know that he's done books such as The Myth Hunters, Wildwood Road, Boys Are Back in Town, Ferrymen, Strange Wood, and so forth. And you can go to Christopher Golden's site and find out about all his books there. And I've read a couple of his books. He's a very good writer as well. And his it's interesting in light of the fact that we just did Stand By Me, which was a coming of age story. He touches upon the same things about Salem lot. Is there's a town, the old kind of town. I guess for you, Hans, this doesn't apply because you said you grew up in the city, but I grew up in a smaller town, and I know that small town feel has died. And in Salem's Lot, of course, that small town basically literally dies. But it's the same. The story sort of touches on the same memories that Stand By Me did about growing up with a close, tight-knit group of friends in a small town. And this is Salem's Lot. It touches on that small town and type of mentality as well. So there's a lot. It's a lot of cool stuff wrapped into this story. It's not one of my favorite King books by a long shot, but I do like. I think what I really like about Salem's Lot is what he did with the priest, Father Callahan. That what happened to him later on in the Dark Tower, it just makes what happens in Salem's Lot all that more powerful if you reread it again after knowing what he goes through after that. So that's kind of cool. And I don't know, where does Salem's Lot stand for you, Hans? Is it in your top 10 or?
Well, since it was so far ago I read it, it's actually pretty hard to place it.
Okay.
But I think I remember liking it, but I don't think it's in my top 10. Maybe my top 15 or maybe top 20. At least as I remember it. I guess I'm gonna have to read it again to be sure.
Yeah.
If it's anything that this revisited does, it makes me want to reread all of King's books in order.
Yes.
But unfortunately, I don't really have that time to do it.
No.
Or I could do it, but it would take like for 20 years. No, maybe not. Maybe not that far.
Yeah.
But I don't have as much time to read as I want to. But it would be fun to start over again and read all the books.
Yes, it definitely
from the
would
beginning.
be. Yeah, that's a problem because back in the day when King was starting out and these books were coming out, we as readers only got or knew about a small select book selection of books, and the only way we could get them was through either the library or buying them. And now, like with everything, you can download it, and the choices are mind-boggling nowadays. You just look at everything and said, I can't even get through a minuscule amount of all the material that's out there. So, and you do want to kind of keep current with the new stuff, but yeah, you really would like to be able to go back and reread some of the stuff, which is kind of one of the cool things about doing these podcasts is that, in order for us to talk about them semi-intelligently, we do have to go back and look at them. And it's good when you do that, like going back to Stand By Me and now going back to Salem's Lot. As you, with this Stephen King Revisited idea, which I think is just great, it really touches on a lot of memories that you've forgotten about. And Richard goes through his column here. He's talking about the black cover book too, and he shows this beat up cover of the book. The front cover's gone, but you can see that it's a very old book, and again, it has some of the most powerful imagery of the original miniseries that was really well captured, like the Danny Glick floating outside the window. It's probably one of the scariest things that I remember growing up during that time. And, something that was similar to me was like the original Night Stalker with Darren McGavin. That kind of touched on the same sort of vibes that Stephen King was able to do with Salem's Lot as well. So, and it's a strong book, but it just leaves me really wanting to know what happened to Mark Petrie at the end of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Maybe someday.
Maybe.
Yeah.
You got any other thoughts about it, Hans?
Yeah, it's interesting to go back to older books that you haven't read for a while, because you remember most of them pretty well. And it gets me thinking, because something happened last week at work. A coworker came to me and said he was listening to Duma Key on audio.
Okay.
And he asked me what I thought about the book, and I realized I had a hard time remembering details from that book.
Right.
I know the main plot and stuff like that, but so I could talk to him about it and somewhat, but I it struck me that I had some problem with remembering details from it, and that makes me think when it comes to older books that has been turned into movies, and if you haven't read the book in quite some time, how much of what you remember is actually the movie and what is the book, because that happens a lot with The Shining for many people.
Yes.
That they remember the movie very, very well.
Yeah.
And they can't understand why someone who likes King's book says that it's a terrible movie.
Yeah.
Because they think they remember the book, but they really remember the movie. So, and that was very obvious to me now that I got, because Duma Key hasn't been done as a movie, and it was released, I think it's around 8 years ago or something like that. And it, just by realizing that I could really put my finger on all the details, that made me want to read the books all over again, to go back, because I think I mean a lot of the books I read in the 80s and 90s, and when I first catched up with King, he had been obviously publishing books like for a decade.
Right.
And a lot of them were translated to Swedish. So when I started reading him, there were a lot of books that I could just. There was always a new King book that I could read, and I think that made me so eager to read them that some of them I probably read way too fast, and didn't really reflect on them. That when I was finished with one, I just took the next one, and I want to read. And some of them I've gone back and reread afterwards, and so. But well, I think it would be interesting to reread them today and see what you think about them.
Yeah, well, that's the whole idea of this Stephen King Revisited. So if they've got the list of books there. If you want to work ahead, you can do that. But I agree with you. It's interesting. It's kind of like what your experience was with King is for me was like with I just recently, over the last 2 years, I got into the Jim Butcher, Harry Dresden series. And there was like 14 books, 15 books. So it was great. I finished one book and I could just read the next one. And for like 2 years, I was just, just finishing one, picking up the next one, and now I'm caught up, and now I have to wait every 2 years for the next book.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that's sort of like the Netflix version of a TV series that puts all the episodes up at once. That happens very rarely for a reader if you unless you're just young and you're starting out, and you've got all these books to read, and it's like wow. Yeah. Whereas now, we've kind of found the things that we've liked and we've read them all, and in some cases started to reread them. But there's that time period when you just, whenever you want, you can pick up a new book by a new favorite author and just read it. And that's an awesome time period to be in. And then you get caught up and it's like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I'm actually thinking about doing all the books from audio, starting with Carrie and moving ahead.
How does that work for you? When do you listen to them? When you're going to work, or?
Yeah, I ride my bike to work and I listen to them then. And when I'm vacuuming at home, I listen to them. And
Mr. Mom,
when I'm
right?
Sorry.
What's your wife doing? No, I don't want to get.
You don't want to go there.
No, I don't want to go there. Hi, Hans' wife.
Yep. And when I ride a car and go to the store and everything you do that's boring, you can always listen to a book.
Oh, well, I thought you would listen to
so
music.
that actually works fine for me.
Oh, okay.
Of course, I can't do it when I can't do it at work, and I can't do it when I have to be focusing on something else, because then I won't register what they're reading to me. But I think it works good for me to read, to listen to books on audio. So
cool.
And that
I do like it when I do it, but I don't have the opportunity because I'm usually reading during the time period that I could listen to audiobooks. So
yeah. Well, for me that frees up quite some time that I wouldn't be able to read otherwise. Like when I'm vacuuming, I obviously can't have a book reading because then I won't get it done very good.
You must have turned up pretty loud to get over the vacuum cleaner noise.
Yeah. But you gotta sacrifice something, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I just have one more thing that I want to mention, and that is I checked on Amazon, and the book I was looking for with Christopher Golden is the Stephen King universe.
Oh, okay.
Which he wrote with Hank Wagner and Stanley Wader. Right?
Okay. I'm glad you put that up, or else we'd probably get a lot of letters, emails from people saying, no, he did do something Stephen King related.
Yes, and this is actually a book I have. So
I've never heard of it.
It's quite interesting. He takes different books that's connected.
Oh, okay.
Like the Dark Tower and every book that's connected to that one, and it's been a while since I read it, but I think he has one section of Castle Rock.
Oh, okay.
Or
I'll have to
Derry,
look this up.
or
Jeez.
Yeah, so he makes a connection that these books are connected because of this, and these are connected because of these, and
oh, cool.
So it's quite an interesting book.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Apologies, Mr. Golden. I hadn't realized that you had done that.
No, but I'm surprised they didn't mention it at the ending of his article.
Yeah, I looked there. I didn't see anything.
Yeah.
Or maybe I missed it. I don't know. But yeah.
No, I didn't see that there either. So
yeah.
That's a little bit bad.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So there you go, folks. That's our most recent revisit of the Stephen King revisit. So we're doing a lot of revisiting. But I hope you're finding these fun. They're a bit different than the in-depth reviews that we typically do for a particular book. But it's just fun to read other people's comments and see what kind of ideas and discussions it can spark between me and Hans as we see what other people, whether they're sharing similar experiences or whether they've pointing out something new that I never thought of. Maybe you have, Hans, or maybe there's other things. But it's just interesting to see how the books strike people in a lot of similar ways, but at the same time also in different ways. It's a cool mix.
Yeah. This is a way for us also to work our way through King's books, because we don't have the time to read them and do the excellent job that Richard is doing.
Yes.
Reading each books and going through them in a deeper way than we are doing.
Absolutely.
So this is our budget way of doing it. If you like.
We're cheating. Yeah. And Bev always finds interesting facts too about from a historical perspective for each book, which is cool to find out these tidbits that I didn't know about. So
this is we are more collecting what others are saying and giving our input.
Yeah, this is the audiobook version.
Yeah, exactly.
Alrighty, so that wraps up this podcast, and we will be back at we're planning to be back with our next episode at the end of June, after everybody's gone out and read Finders Keeper, which is from this podcast, is out in 2 days, and I'm sure by the end of the month, most of you will probably read it, if not once, maybe twice, and we're going to talk about it and see how it sets things up for the third book.
Yes, I have read it so far. I read the book and is listening to the audiobook as we speak, actually.
Wow.
Right now? So,
you're a good multitask.
No, not really. No, not exactly now, but
okay.
And I really like the book. I can reveal that much.
Cool.
So it's a good book. You should definitely go out and get it. And if you haven't already pre-ordered it, do that so you have it as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. And we will be back and talking about it.
Yes, and a little tip on that: if you order it and also Bizarre Bad Dreams at the same time, then you get free shipping on both books. So because you have to be over, like, is it $25, $30? Like, I think it's $25. You get free shipping, so you can pre-order and they will ship them separately, which is cool. So Stephen King has saved me some shipping money the last couple of years.
Yeah. Good thing you don't have to wait for it till both books are out together.
Yes, fortunately not. No, they do ship it as soon as it publishes, which is good. So anyhow, that wraps up this podcast. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. And remember, as always, stay safe.
But
go ahead.
Stay scared.
There you go. Bye.
Yep. Bye.